Hello, welcome. I'm here for one of my stories. This is Lindsay Dunn, and today I have the honor of talking to Justin Benson and Aaron Moorhead, two filmmakers very much on the rise. They've always had a following, but they are making a huge disturbance in the force this year with their weird fiction film, Something in the Dirt. Justin and Aaron, welcome to one of my stories.
Thank you for having us, Lindsay.
Thank you.
Yeah, I wasn't sure if we would be able to work this out, so I'm so glad. I'm glad we did. So it is a huge honor for me to be speaking to you because this is in my top 5 films of this year. Now I have to be honest with you in that this is the first film of yours that I have seen, and you made this with a slim crew and budget. Did you ever imagine that Something in the Dirt would be this loved and well received? I fell in love with it right away, and it seems like others have as well. So did you have a sense that this is going to be loved by people, or have you been surprised at the reception that you've gotten from it?
It's funny. I'm going to give 2 answers. One is while we were developing the script and shooting it, I knew what we were doing was special. I knew it was interesting. I knew that there was not an easy way to compare this movie to another movie. And it was very freeing because you can do that when you have almost no budget. You can tell any story you want. The consequences are so low in terms of financial problems that it could cause. Mm-hmm. Of course, you want people to like your movie. But I think that Justin and I were pretty aware, essentially once the script was done, that this is going to be a movie that doesn't have an easy comparison, which is very interesting to us. Yeah. And I'm going to lead that idea into when the movie was done, but before anyone had really seen it, I personally felt, and I think I can say this without any ego, for the first time ever on our 5th film, I did not actually care what people thought of it. For the first time ever, I could dig down in my heart of hearts and think, I know what this movie is, and I hope that everybody likes it, and I think they will. But if they don't, at least I know what it is, and I'm comfortable with that. I can sleep peacefully knowing I made a film. And I say I meaning Justin. I'm just kind of probing my own emotions here. I knew that I could answer for everything in the film honestly and felt good about that. And that was enough for me. I did not know that people would be rapturously embracing it like they have been today. I had no clue. That's something we're still learning in real time.
Anything you want to add, Justin?
I mean, I think he got it all. I mean, I guess the only thing I might add is genuinely had no idea, but like Aaron, didn't care. I don't want to say I don't care, but wasn't as worried as much as how well it would be received, because we had just kind of reached this place creatively after about a decade. We were like no longer ever trying to like kind of check the boxes of like a script you might find on the spec market or something in Hollywood. And nothing against those at all. I was just kind of realizing like, oh, like that's not going to satisfy us, and no one's looking for that from us. So just do this, whatever our weird impulses are, just follow all those and stop worrying about trying to make it more along the lines of something that does well in the industry at large, but maybe just isn't for us. And really just like following and trusting our own impulses a little more. This is probably when we were trusting our weird creative impulses more than we ever had, and a lot of satisfaction came out of that, and so much so that, you know, if it went out into the world and people were just like, well, I don't like you and I don't think this is good, and it'd be okay.
Mm-hmm.
Well, there's this fun observation that Justin put into words, something that we were all feeling and couldn't quite figure out. So unfortunately, we also have to classify ourselves as business people. That's what being an independent filmmaker is. Nobody's doing it for you. So you go to film festivals, you look at what does well, and you know, with a lot of curiosity. Of course, almost always, like it just goes. Things mostly do well in the indie market when they're just good, because you can't just buy. You can't buy interest, people's interest. You can't put up billboards. It just doesn't happen. So it's just like there's got to be some kind of zeitgeisty thing about it, or it's just good. That's really the only way that it works with indie film. And so there was a realization, and it became a conversation with all of our distributors, but it's just something that we do at our company here, Rustic Films, where there is an inverse relationship between commerciality and success in indie film. If people are going to watch an independent film, they want something different. They don't want something commercial. There's a reason they're going to indie film. And so trying to design a film that feels commercial or feels like it reaches above, like feels like not an indie film, is actually a folly, and it doesn't work. And audiences reject it like they're being advertised to in the wrong way. And it's kind of, you accidentally make a movie that's kind of for no one. So anyways, our business model is embracing weirdness, I guess is my point.
Right. So that actually leads into the question I was going to ask last, but since it kind of really tags in nicely. So you also work on Marvel stuff with Moon Knight and season 2 of Loki coming up. And I have mixed feelings about that. So on the one hand, I think, okay, good on you, MCU. You have some really creative outside the box people working on your stuff, which is going to make those shows better. On the other hand, I'm like, oh no, I like that you guys are outside the box and I don't want you to get tainted by the machine. So I know you guys choose your projects very deliberately. What would you say to your fans that worry you'll just become another brick in the wall? I mean, how do you come to terms with that?
Oh, well, I'll make an answer that's independent of how maybe one might describe films that we do outside of our company, Rustic Films. And it's that we'll never stop making rustic films. Like, we will literally never stop making independent films. It's something we continuously do. We can't stop doing it. It's like like an addiction that's good for us, probably. but we'll never stop. And if anything, we have over, I know we've been doing this for a little over a decade. In that span of time, we've definitely fallen deeper in love with making these smaller movies that are more personal and following and in our weird little collective of artists that we've come up with over the last decade. Was about covered, Aaron?
Yeah. I mean, we're proving it now. We directed these things years ago, and no budget, literally our lowest budget film. We're not going away from indie film. It's part of the goal.
Yeah, that's great. The characters were what sold it to me. You can have an interesting plot, but if you don't have characters that interest me, I don't want it. So you mentioned that the characters are nothing like you. I mean, we have Levi, who's an asexual bartender and wedding photographer who's in recovery for multiple things. And then John, who's really involved with his church and charges scooters for cash and is living off his ex-husband's bank account. They have a very interesting dynamic. So how did you come up with these characters?
Very long Google Docs, thinking about people that we grew up with, thinking about people that we've come across in our lives, working tons of different random jobs, and then also characters that each of us personally wanted to play that were very, very different than characters we had played in the past, and especially very different than the brothers we played in The Endless. And Breaking Bad, Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul. that was
Yeah.
There was the Jesse Walt dynamic, and just in general the way Vince Gilligan writes characters into that universe.
And actually, I just remembered this because I haven't said this one much, but I think I slightly based my character of John on Oscar Isaac and Ex Machina, only in that the character of John has seen Ex Machina and wishes he was that guy.
So they fit into this story of two drifters who happen to be in the same place at the same time. They're connected by a place, friendship by proximity. But I was fascinated by their interaction. When you make a new friend, it's very not too different from falling in love. You get to know them, you share stories, you have fights, you make up or you don't. You create a world between the two of you. So how did you go about building this world of John and Levi? What they would talk about, what their relationship would be like? Maybe the answer is Google Docs again, but it's like there's so much creativity in not just what the characters are, but how they relate to each other and how they create this world. And yeah, it was just great. That was like such a fascinating part, even though that has not, you could have the plot of like, oh, we're observing this weird apartment, but the fact that they have this thing where they're like, okay, we are going to do this. Now we're not trusting each other. Now I'm suspicious of him. And now, just, I could go on, but you can probably talk about it much better than me since it's your movie.
It's a really good question. One thing that's kind of interesting is the scene where they meet. Something we talked about when we were doing that scene and the way it would be performed was that they're both acting in that scene. They're both acting as being what they think is the best version or most charming version of themselves. And it's probably not true, but their hope is in that moment, like that's probably the way Levi talks to John is probably the way he greets most people coming into his bar, and it's really charming for about 15 minutes, and then it runs out. And John Alvarin commented that he's also putting something forward in that first meeting that you really don't see very much of, and as much as time goes on in the movie.
Mm-hmm.
Oh no, did we lose Aaron?
No. Oh, am I not here? Oh, I'm so sorry. I think something jostled. I'm still here. Can you hear me?
Sorry.
Okay.
Yeah,
I liked your answer though, so I'm good. I love that.
So you were putting on the best version. He's putting the best. Both of them are putting the best version. I like that description. I think that matches with, when you fall in love, you present yourself as this one way, and then as you get to know them, you start to be more of yourself and let that out. And there's that risk of like, will they like me or not? And so my walls are going to be up.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and
no,
I was just gonna say the great tragedy, the tragedy of the movie, and something we're aiming for is that when they get to that point in a human relationship, whether it's romantic, friendship, or otherwise, that when they get to that point where they've gotten to know each other enough that what they pretend to be, because they think that's what people want to see, when all that goes away and they run out of that, they've been through these things together and had these huge blowout arguments that they ultimately decide to not proceed in that relationship. And that was a story that we wanted to tell. We thought that there was a really interesting tragedy to that we'd never quite seen before.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I think also something that we encounter this on scripts that we read that we don't develop ourselves. But there's a lot of there's a little bit of a reaction to notes that we've heard on our own scripts and things that we've seen on scripts we haven't written ourselves and all that, which is this idea of likability and the clarity of hero and villainism and all of that. And by the way, that can be really good. It's something that is, that especially in back in the day was one of the strengths of older films and all of that. But when you're making indie films, you're trying to explore like these extreme new, like very modern day nuances of personality. Gray is a lot more interesting to us. And so we have these characters that you change their alliances, you don't know how to feel about them. Hopefully by the end of the film, you just kind of accept them as extraordinarily flawed human beings, but they're just human beings. Neither of them are, you can still recognize yourself in both of them, even no matter how you feel about it. And I think Justin and I really tried hard not to ever judge our own characters negatively. We think one of the biggest problems, something that we're super allergic to in films and stuff that we work on as well, is when a bad person knows that they're bad. They're just like, I just want power, like whatever that is, or anything like that kind of an idea. I just want to be rich. When they're clearly motivated and they internally believe that they are motivated by things that everybody would say are bad. And so even when our characters are doing things that are very questionable, we personally were always motivating these questionable things through a virtue. So when John is manipulating Levi, there was a means to an end that is virtuous. I was approaching it from very literally, I thought I would change the world if I got this right, and when Levi is doing a bunch of mystery drugs and probably stealing shit from people and all these little things, they were like just little mischiefs that he wouldn't mind if someone did to him. He doesn't get offended by them, and I think not judging our characters is really important, and both as directors and as performers.
Yeah. Well, it looks like our time is out, and I want to respect your time, but thank you so much for coming on the Zoom room to chat with me about your movie.
Fun.
Thank you so much, Lindsay.
Okay. Have a good rest of your day. Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you.